Hey guys, Ash Von Chamier, owner of Rough Cut Productions in Tallahassee, Florida. Welcome back to another tidbit of information I do want to throw at you. And this is really more for people that are just getting into filming. A lot of people know what a log picture profile is, but if you're just getting into cameras, you don't know what the purpose of this is. So I want to help you guys out too. I don't want to only make videos that are for people that are further along in their field.
In a world where nuclear war has begun, vampires fought back in super real 3D.
All right, log picture profiles, every camera manufacturer has one. So Sony has S-Log, Panasonic has V-Log, Canon has C-Log, and so on. The point of filming with a log picture profile is basically to get more information, as much as you can get off of your camera's sensor, put into your codec. So you're going to be able to retrieve back more information when you go to color grade it in post-production. Now, if you're not planning to color grade your footage, you don't want to touch the log picture profile. This is only for people that are planning to color grade. I just want to go over why you'd want to film in log, and what it's going to do for you is about really three main things. It's going to give you more dynamic range. For instance, in the Sony a7S camera that I use, if I put the camera in log picture profile, I'm going to get an extra couple of stops of dynamic range, which is a really big deal. And if you don't know what dynamic range is, I happily invite you to hop back over and check out the video that I already just recently made on dynamic range, which is really what instigated me thinking I should probably give this information about this log picture profile too for people that are getting started. Now, the other thing that you're going to get in addition to dynamic range is potentially you're supposed to be able to get better color accuracy. So like better skin tones in particular. They say more natural skin tones. Pretty much every camera manufacturer touts this coming along with if you film in log, you're gonna get that. And the other thing that you're gonna get is overall, and this kind of is tied together with dynamic range, but better highlight roll-off. And highlight roll-off is if you have a really harsh light coming in on the subject or whatever the object is, and basically instead of it gradiating into the shadows very smoothly, it's just kind of harsh and jagged. And that's pretty much, that's kind of a sign of a cheaper camera. If you have really bad highlight roll-off, it looks very video and not filmic. Film really just kind of, it blends right in. Film is notoriously known for having the best highlight roll-off, and every digital camera has been trying to achieve that through this past couple of decades, and in my opinion, we've hit it. But some film enthusiasts would disagree. However, whatever, apples and oranges, it's that close. It's debatable at this point, so that's good. If you're gonna film in log, it's gonna look like crap. And this is why you do not want to use a log picture profile if you're not gonna do color grading, because it's gonna be very desaturated. It's going to have practically no contrast. The blacks are going to be very milky and almost like gray. And honestly, it's kind of a pain to film in log because it's way harder to pull focus. And if you're not using some kind of external monitor or focus assist tools, and you're just using the little LCD on the back of your camera, it's going to be a lot harder to pull focus on it. So that makes it challenging too. So why are you going to give all that extra effort? It's to get those other features out of your camera. You're trying to get as much out of your camera as you can. So by default, you would say, I should be filming in log then. I got better dynamic range, I got better skin tones, I got better highlight roll-off, I know I'm getting more information out of the sensor, and you're gonna potentially have more flexibility in post to create whatever look you want it to be. So that sounds great, and it can be that way. It can totally be that way, but if you're filming in a highly compressed, very small bitrate codec, like small megabits per second, and low color, like 8-bit color, it may not be great to film in log. Like, you might want to choose when to film in log, because what can happen is when you go to push that in the color grade, it can start breaking apart relatively fast. And what I've personally found when I film internally into my A7S, it just doesn't hold up that great. The only time is when I really need that dynamic range, then I would go to the log picture profile. And the reason being that when I go to push the color back into it, I'm kind of consistently a bit disappointed with the color. It always feels like I'm pumping saturation into the image. So now I'm not saying that that's the case with the newer Sony cameras. I don't know, I haven't tried them. But my point is that you're gonna wanna test this in your camera. Like, see how it handles color once you push it back in, and then compare that to a colored picture profile where you're not filming in log and you're trying to create a look right there in the camera and you see what you like and you're going to film that. Just compare them side to side and see what looks better, because depending on the codec, it may not be best to film in log. And that's just something that you might run into in reality. On paper, it completely makes sense to film with log. The way that I film log, I have both a Sony FS700 and an A7S. Both of those are actually older cameras, and they pair up great with my Red Epic Dragon, and the reason is because I run them to an external recorder, the Odyssey 7Q, and when I do that, I can film in ProRes, in 4K, and so I definitely film in log when I'm doing that because I have a tremendous amount of flexibility to create the image, and it looks great, and I'm increasing the dynamic range. I'm getting all the benefits of log when I film like that. If you have an external recorder and you can film in ProRes, I would say always film in log if that's the case. But if you're using a highly compressed codec, I just recommend personally run a few tests and just see. Just make sure that you're actually happier with the colors. Now, Canon in general has their cameras have less dynamic range than Sony's cameras overall. When it comes to Sony and it comes to Canon's C-Log to me has a bit more color already still baked into it. Like, it's still a little bit contrastier and it's got a little bit more color information just still already there. When you film in Sony's log, it's even flatter. This has been my personal experience in playing around with some of Canon's footage and being a Sony user for years now with their S-Log, is that you have to push the Sony footage a little bit harder. And what makes that a little bit worse is that if you're filming in a weaker codec on the Sony camera, the color science of Sony is just simply not as touted. It's kind of like the thing that gets criticized the most on the Sony cameras is their color science. And Canon's color science is like the reason people stick with Canon. So Canon's weak codec versus Sony's internal weak codec, and I'm calling them weak in comparison to ProRes or RAW, okay? Canon's is already got a little bit more color still sitting in there. It's a little bit less contrasty, so you have to push it less hard, and the color science is already going to be potentially a little bit better out of the gate, out of the box, so you're going to have to push it a little bit less. So you kind of go further, in my opinion, with Canon's 8-bit C-Log codec than you do with Sony's 8-bit S-Log codec when it's internal. Now, when it comes to filming to an external recorder, if you can turn this into ProRes, in my opinion, I'm kind of back in general with the Sony camp, because you're going to have, in general, Sony cameras overall, again, generalization here, most Sony cameras nowadays have more dynamic range than Canon's lineup and their offerings. So having more dynamic range is huge to me. If you saw my last episode about dynamic range, you know how I feel about it. It's one of the biggest attributes I look for in a camera. So that kind of keeps me over in Sony's camp. Now, Red beats both of these. It has the most dynamic range, and in my opinion, I like the color science of Red better than both. But overall, it's of high value to film in a log picture profile if you are in a harsh environment that's very bright. If you're in a dark environment that's being lit, you really might want to experiment with just doing a picture profile that looks great in the box. That's my recommendation, so that way you don't have to push it as hard just to get color back. That's log picture profiles. If you dug that overview, please do go ahead and throw me a like. That would be awesome. If you want to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, that would be fantastic too. The notification bell does let you know every time a new episode's out. While I'm putting out a new episode every Thursday, I am very, very often putting out an additional episode weekly too, so that notification bell would let you know when one of those is out. As a single person operation, I'm really kind of giving you info on all this stuff, from the storyboard planning and marketing to running your own business, to the editing, to color grading, to the actual filming and lenses and why I use what camera with what. All right, guys, take care, and I will see you on the next one.
Movie Voice.